Hi everyone, hope everyone's well. This evening I am going to start playing The Last Gamble. This is one of the scenarios. This is Battle Before the Meuse, and it uses the single map, slightly smaller. Well, it's a lot smaller than the double map. And it's a little bit smaller than a standard size, what I call a standard size wargame map. And it's just a few things I want to touch on before we get into the game. The first thing is I have placed all the counters on the map and in their starting positions. Now you'll see these orange little hexagon markers. They are there to help me, remind me of the variety of different objectives for this particular scenario. In terms of the background for the scenario, and I'm going to quote from the book itself, from the game booklet. The Battle of the Meuse scenario is 7 turns long, so it's not, I think they sort of say 6 hours, something like that, and is based on the historical background for the 22nd of December scenario. It has its own smaller map, captures the very climax of the Ardennes offensive when the German forces of the 5th Panzer Army, our Germans set up on this side of the map here, attempt to cross the Meuse River. The Meuse River stretches from down here all the way up through to the top of the map there. What else did it say? And the American forces counterattack to smash the poorly supplied enemy spearheads. So hopefully there'll be lots of Germans trying to progress across the map and the Allies smashing them back. So yeah, all the counters are set up. So you can see there's quite a few objectives for the Germans to try and take and the Allies to try and protect. Now, thankfully, is the battle is it called the battle book? The game booklet comes with full details of the scenario, and there are player aids. And I'm going to show the setup cards in a minute because I actually filmed those before I put all the counters on the map. And I'm going to show those as well. There's also a player aid specifically for this scenario where you can keep track of things like replacement points and settlement control, so as the Germans try and take all the different points. It also gives you rules about the supply lines and air operations. There are specific rules about movement for this scenario. Now, what I have found, just on reading, obviously this is the first time I've played The Last Gamble, is the actual core rule set, movement, combat, looks very straightforward. Where the game's level of detail, and therefore you could describe that as complexity, comes in, is around a lot of the rule exceptions in Chrome to do with the specific either units or specific turns or elements of the scenario itself. And there are a number of those to keep track of. For example, there are specific rules for all the British units. And the British units are the lighter coloured units here. I'm just pointing out a couple compared to the American units, which are the slightly darker colours. I'm hoping the camera will pick those two types out. So there are specific rules for the British units. There are some specific rules for some of the American units as well. And then there are specific rules to this scenario. So definitely what I will do is, as I'm playing through this game, and this is absolutely not a scenario I am going to get through in one evening or would indeed attempt to. Instead, I'm going to play this over quite a few evenings, take my time and cross-reference as many of the Chrome elements of the game, special rules elements of the game, to try and get as many correct as I can on the first playthrough. As it is my first playthrough, really, I am using this, and I'll talk about this in the video a lot, of the learning of the game. That's my objective, is to try and learn as much about the game mechanics as possible without concerning myself about the best strategies or optimal strategies. Quite the contrary, I will probably make a myriad of poor decisions on both sides, and I will probably get some of the rules wrong. So apologies up front about that, but that is how I learn to play games. I learn as much about doing things wrong as I do about doing things right. In fact, I would argue sometimes learn more the hard way, as it were. But what I will do is, as I go through every turn, I will try my best to get as many of the rules correct as I possibly can, but invariably will not. So just a forewarning on that. But I am very much looking forward to playing through the game. Like I said, the core rules look like they make a lot of sense. There doesn't seem to be anything too much in there that, when I read through the rule book, I stumbled over in my understanding. When I get, when I start rolling the dice and moving the counters about, of course that may change, and I'll happily discuss anything like that I find. I'm also going to talk about some of the rules as I'm playing the game, how I like to do these videos, and how I'm going to do this video today. I'm not going to video myself thumbing through a rule book or rolling dice. That'd be incredibly boring and tedious for everyone. Instead, what I'll do, I will play off camera, and then I will record as sort of, an overview of what's happening in the battle, as well as some of the game mechanics that I want to draw attention to as I come across them in the game. So it's not a tutorial or anything like that. It's more my impressions and my understanding of the game, and demonstrating that, talking about it and discussing it in the video. But I've got everything set up. There is quite a few player aids that I have collated. As I just described in my unboxing, there are an awful lot of player aids in the game. You only need actually a proportion of those for each scenario. So I've got all those put to the side. It's definitely taken the whole table up. And with no further ado, so what I'll do next, I'm going to show the counters, the setup counters on the setup sheets, because it's quite interesting and they're very nicely done. So as well as showing the counters actually on the board on their setup. The other thing I should hasten to add, which I forgot, is because I'm playing the game solo, if I move something or I do something and then I go, oh, that really was not smart, that's not, or I feel that's not a good learning part of the exercise, I will reset it and do it again. It's one of the advantages of playing games solo. Often I do this in solo games. I'll put things back and do it again a different way. And again, I use that as a learner, and I enjoy that part of the playing of the game solo. I am intending to play through all the turns. Occasionally, if I get towards the end and feel like I've learned enough, or I feel like I've made enough decisions and I just want to run the scenario again, I may pack it away early. But normally I do play the games through to their conclusion, or enough of the conclusion that I'm satisfied with. And again, playing solo. Now, there are optional rules, and what I'm going to do, the optional rules it recommends around the fuel dumps, and there was another one that I've just marked in the rule book. Let me just check which one it is. There are quite a few. Allied air observation, 11.10 or 1.10. I'm going to use those optional rules it recommends, but I'm also going to look at the optional rules that are listed as optional, and I'm going to see if I want to use them as I play the game. Now, normally if you're playing two-player, you'd agree all this up front. But again, playing solo, I like to sort of look at the optional rules in situ, and again, it helps me learn. So I may add some of those optional rules in as I play, as they would come up naturally in the game session, but we'll see. No further ado, let's have a look at the counters on the setup cards, and then after that, I think I'm ready to make a start. I do like to check everything over one more time. So yeah, let's have a look at the counters on the setup cards. I thought I'd just show the setup cards quite quickly. There's two for the allies here, and as well as telling you what counters for the setup, it also gives you your reinforcement information and any special rules specific to that counter as well. And it's very useful, a very good player aid. They're the ally ones. I'm just going to move the camera over a little bit. And then we have here the same thing for the German forces as well. And you can clearly see, comparing the two, there are less counters, gameplay counters, or unit counters I should call them really, between the two opposing sides. I've just finished the German turn, we'll call it, for the sake of simplicity, and I just thought it's a good spot just to talk about some of the things I've done, choices I've made, and just talk about some of the rules. So one of the things I've done here is I've brought the Panzerlehr in to attack this point here and try and take it. Rochefort, I think you would maybe pronounce it. Here, which I think from memory is, from a history point of view, is a thing that the Panzerlehr did. Now, I've zoomed the camera in a little bit. The Panzerlehr, they came on as a reinforcement, he says confidently. And I think I could have brought them on and moved them actually a bit more to the west. One of the things that this game has that is definitely going to take a time for me to get my head around. There are lots of different movement types. And of course, a lot of games have different movement types. But in this game, there are a lot of different movement types. And what I've done instead, rather than trying to maybe maximize the movement they could have done, I kind of felt like thematically, and from a history point of view as well, is I would bring the Panzerlehr in here and hopefully open that door there for the Germans in their turn. Then we've got the second Panzer counters here, and they are moving, because it's a night turn, of course, the first turn as well, I should have mentioned that. So they've moved into position, ready to attack in the next turn on this key location here. I don't think there's an objective there for them, but I feel again thematically, and of course, it's, as you can see, there are lots of roads. From a roads point of view, it's quite a good location for them to try and take. We've got some more second pan. This is one of those sort of choices that I made, good or bad. Got these second Panzer counters here that I feel now would have been better served here, but oh well. This is how good way to learn. Now the only combat, because it's a night turn, and if one of the things the game has, it has a combat results table for the day turns and for the night turns, and there's a big difference between them. From what I could ascertain so far, bearing in mind this is only the first turn and I haven't really done any combat yet, but what I can ascertain from looking at the combat table and the results, the combat table at night is a much dicier proposition for the attacker. So we've held off, the Germans have held off doing any attacks at night, with one exception, and there was a engineer counter on this hex here, which is why I've put the dice there, just to remind myself to talk about it. Actually, it's not true. There were two exceptions to this. So this 11th Panzer, 116th Panzer, so I can't quite read from this distance. They attacked that, and the engineer, that number is in what I would call brackets. So it's to their disadvantage really, and they got quite a good die results. So they've retreated away, and that counter has taken that hex there. And again, it's quite a good hex to take, because again it opens up some of the roadways for the Germans. These two areas here I left alone. I did not attack them. I ummed and ahed whether I should be doing that or not, but I couldn't see how there was any possibility of an advantage in doing so. And then on this side of the board, there's a little bit of flare there off the light, but on this side of the board, again I put that dice there to remind me, there was a lone Allied artillery counter, and the 2nd SS Panzers there attacked that and made it retreat. So again, I've placed that there. What I have found on the first turn, it's not because it's a night turn. There's a few things you have to get your head around for that. But what I would initially say for the very first turn of the game, and it's only the first turn of the scenario and the first time I've ever played it, certainly the level of detail of rules around movement seems to be the thing that I need to spend more time getting my head around. There are lots of different movement types, and this is really a good example of understanding the rules and their application. And what I find sometimes when learning a new game to this level of detail and complexity is trying to do those two things at the same time, for me, doesn't always work that well. So what I am doing in this playthrough is worrying a little bit less about both those two areas, trying to understand as much as I can about the rule and giving it an application as best as I think I can without trying to optimize both those two things, if that makes sense. So if you see, or some people might have played this mission or scenario, and gone, well, you could have done this, man, you could have done that. That's truthfully probably could have, but I'm not doing that because I'm taking my time, trying not to worry too much about optimizing everything to the best of their advantages, trying to think about the rule and trying to give it some application. The one thing I forgot to mention is one of the other victory point conditions, considerable for the Germans, of course, is to get across the River Meuse, which is on that way, basically, off the camera there. Hence why I've moved that Panzer group to here. The idea, my thinking is, and again, this is more thematic than game rulesy. My thinking is if the Panzer can take this objective, if the second Panzer can take these objectives, this area here, that means they can sort of push out from this direction and cross the Meuse, which is just off camera. At the same time, of course, the Allies is very straightforward. I'm just going to try and stop them. So from the Allies' point of view, I'm going to move these in their turn next. I'm going to move these units down and just shore up, if that's the right expression, this area here and try and stop the Germans from taking those things that they're going to try and take. Of course, playing the game solo, I know exactly what the plan is, so that's thematically how I'm playing it. But yeah, I just thought that would be a good summary. So because it's taken me a little while, obviously it's taken a while to set the game up, I'm probably going to call it there for this evening. And the next time I play it, I'll play through the British and American first turn, so still on the 23rd of December, and get through that. And it'll also give me a chance to go through the rulebook again. But I find reading rulebooks so many times, it has its purpose, but really it's just through playing the game that I learn. So yeah, next section of this video, but I'll keep it all on this video. Next section will be I'll do the American and the Allies turn and see how that goes. So I've just done the Allies movement for 23rd of December. It's their basically their phasing, as it were, through the night term. And what I've done is I've moved up some of the counters just to reinforce some of the points. So I've moved some counters around this area here. Got some more armour. It's making me think that I really shouldn't have put that unit there for the Germans. I did wonder, and I have brought in some reinforcements and just shored up this part here just to dissuade these SS counters here. And the things I wondered about rhetorically, I did consider this tank destroyer unit counters attacking this Puma. But again, when I looked at this is the nature of war games a bit, you roughly calculate the odds and you think, it's probably not worth the risk really. It's quite a sort of war gamey mechanic, that, which I don't, I understand the maths of it, but sometimes it feels a little bit unthematic. But decided not to. So it's night. I kind of figured maybe they don't quite know the strength of the these German vehicles they can hear in this area here. So no combat at night from the Allies' point of view. And to be honest with you, there wasn't a lot from the Germans' perspective either, though there was a little bit. But we've moved up some of the counters here just to try and slow or prevent or even just stop the German push on this side of the map. For the moment, I'm going to leave the camera on this sort of setting because I think I can see this is going to be where most of the action is. I'm not entirely sure the Germans are going to be able to get much further out, but we'll see. It's only turn 1 and it's not a daylight turn. So looking at the turn record track, there are, of the 7 turns, he says confidently, 7 turns, the 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are night turns, so only 3 daylight turns. And looking at the combat results table, you kind of want to be doing the combat in the daytime, which makes a lot of sense. So I'm not sure the Germans are going to be able to really get any of these objectives too much, but we'll see. We will see. I have, it'll be interesting to see what in this play. One of the things I like about videoing my games like this and playing them solo is that it's a good record for me. I can look back and go, oh well, now I've learnt the game a bit better. I can see you made a big mistake there, Matt, and you could have done this, you could have done that. The Germans could have done this, or the Americans. And I'll be honest with you, looking at the map, how I feel at the minute, I think this is going to be this scenario and this playthrough is going to be the Americans. I don't really see the British getting too much involved, but we'll see. It's quite interesting sort of saying all these statements and then playing through the game and seeing how wrong I am. you know what I mean. So, but I'm just musing really. So the next turn, I think what I'll do on this video, I think I'm going to include the next daylight turn. So I'll spend the next few evenings playing that daylight turn. So that'll be the 24th of December during the day. And I've just finished the German element of the 24th of December AM part of the turn. So I'll do the Americans next. But from a German perspective, on the plus side, they were able to bomb these units here and disrupt them and hopefully stop them from moving in to reinforce this area here. I need to, when it comes to the American turns, need to check what that disrupted counter, what impact that has. And then on this area here, the Germans, the Panzer are fighting over, they were able, through a very, very lucky dice roll, get a step loss on that counter there. And working out the odds and working out the final odds that you'll be using on the combat table does take a little bit of time. There's quite a few modifiers, and the column that you're using can go up and down depending on the circumstances. But I feel like I'm starting to get to grips with just working that out. Just starting to. So a step loss there, but it was a lucky die roll, to be honest with you. So what the Americans are going to try and do is hopefully hold on here and then see if, I think there'll be a bit of a stalemate in terms of the combat charts. I don't know how I'm imagining it in my mind's eye of the battle unfolding isn't quite like that, but in terms of the combat dice and the tables, etc. Combat completely ineffective here, nothing going on. This area here, I think this counter here, which was Stuart's, the Germans made them retreat 1 hex, no combat there. And then on this side, unfortunately for the Waffen SS, their attack was completely repulsed, and they took a step loss and retreated back along there. Oh no, what a shame. And the Americans are doing quite well on this side, managed to hold them back. So again, in the narrative that I'm playing out, I think the Americans will probably be able to hold this line here, maybe bring some units up, maybe and sort of counter them along here. They're holding the Germans back here, and I think when it comes to the American turn, I'll have a look to see if I think it's worth letting the Americans run an attack on some of these German counters or not. Again, it's one of those differences, I think, with wargaming. When counters just facing off against each other and there's no real advantage to either side, that doesn't, in my mind, that doesn't mean there's not combat, there's not fighting. It just means it's not fighting up to the extent of there being an impact on enough of an impact on the unit to make them retreat or enable them to push forwards, for example. But that doesn't mean to say that in my imagination, as I'm playing through the game, that there's not fighting. Quite the contrary. So I feel like I'm starting to get a bit more to grips on this turn with some of the combat. I reread the rule book again last night before doing this turn. There is some parts of the combat that are quite interesting that I was reading about that I'm quite keen to try out, and I think I'm just going to move the combat results table so I can see it. It's when you get a engaged result, and then you can bring up exploitation reserve. So as a result of combat, if you get an engaged result, if you've put friendly units specifically, etc., in an exploited movement or something, you can bring them into combat, which I'm paraphrasing this because I don't have the rulebook in front of me. And that's quite interesting. I don't see that too often, so I'm quite keen to try that out. I'm not entirely sure this is the scenario to do it. I'm not entirely sure the Germans can do it. I don't think they can really, but maybe the Americans can in their phase. So I'm pretty sure when I go through that they will be able to do that. Or makes more, the more the application makes more sense. So I might have a look at doing that in the American turn. We'll see. But it was quite an enjoyable turn. Like I said, I feel like I'm starting to get to grips with the rules a little bit more. And it's definitely going to take more than a few turns for that. I definitely would say so. But there is quite a lot to go through. The other thing I would say is, having played that turn, if I'm being honest, most of my time is spent in the rulebook. Nothing wrong with that. It is a very detailed game. What I would expect. And I think the Germans have had opportunities. I still feel this was a badly placed unit here, though it is stopping the Americans. I don't know. It's one of those points of interest. It's very easy. One of the things, I'm sure I'm not the only person that suffers from this. One of the things I definitely suffer from in war games at this level of detail can be paralysis by analysis, which is basically I overthink everything and end up doing nothing. And I deliberately force myself to do something, even if it's the wrong thing, to try and learn from it. So, no further ado, I shall do the American phase of this turn. So at the end of the American phase, this disrupted stack here hasn't been able to do anything. So it has caused, the Americans here are holding on to these key objectives, but they've not had the opportunity to sort of counter some of the German movement. So we're still here in this sort of vicinity. They brought some reinforcements up, so they're in a pretty good position here. I do just need to double check actually that disrupted. I just assumed that whilst disrupted, it means they are ineffective. We'll just double check that, and if they could have done anything, I will sort that out before the next turn. So that was 24th of December in the morning. So the next turn is the 24th of December PM. And what I'll do, I think this video's already quite long, so I'll edit this video and put that on my and sort that out. And then the next video I do, the next episode of this particular scenario, I'll start with the 24th. I do feel I'm getting more to grips with the core rules, so movement and combat. I think there's still a lot to learn, and a lot to learn of its application. That's probably the key thing. But I'm feeling more confident in my understanding of the rule set, albeit at a reasonable pace. Certainly, it's working out the combat odds. I do like how you work out the combat odds. I do like all the combined arms and different charts that you're using. I'm finding that quite engrossing. I just need to kind of work out how to then action that, as it were. Do you know what I mean? To the best of both sides. But like I said before at the beginning of this video, is not put myself under any pressure. Quite happy just to play through the scenario and learn as much as I can. And in doing so, I think that's a good way for me to learn. I'm sure I'm not the only one that learns in that manner. But certainly at the outcome of the 23rd of December, at the end of the AM of the 24th of December, I feel like the Americans have stopped the Germans from doing what the Germans really want to do, which is get across that Meuse River, which is just that way, and stop them from taking too many more objectives. So feeling good about that. And I look forward to playing a bit more, maybe later in the week.